Welcome back to Link by Golf. I'm your host Ross McGuire. Alongside Link by Golf, I also co-host another podcast called Both Sides of Par with Colin Gray. While Link by Golf celebrates the people and stories that make golf so special, Both Sides of Par is all about the journey of two golfers at opposite ends of the handicap spectrum. We cover everything from course reviews to gear we've bought or tested and what we're working on to improve our games. Every now and then we'll bring an episode across that I think you'll really enjoy, and today's is exactly that. This is a conversation Colin and I had with Scott Fawcett, creator of the Decade Course Management System. Scott's work has transformed the way tour professionals, elite amateurs and everyday golfers plan their way around the golf course. And if you've ever wondered how to shoot lower scores without changing your swing, you're going to get a lot from this episode. I hope you enjoy this special crossover from Both Sides of Par.
Hey folks, and welcome to Both Sides of Par. This is the golf podcast that comes at the sport from both ends of the handicap spectrum. I'm Colin, I'm the high handicapper, and this is Ross, he's the low handicapper. How are you getting on, Ross?
Yeah, pretty well, Colin. Doesn't always feel like I'm a low handicapper, but hey-ho, there we go.
That's the sport of golf for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
This week around, though, we've got a guest, don't we? We've got Scott Fawcett on the show with us here. Ross, you know Scott far better than I here. Do you want to give a little intro for us?
Yeah, I've listened to Scott a number of times. I actually picked up one of my favourite things, and there's a lot of different things you talk about, Scott, but one of my favourite things I heard you talking about was putting from like 15 feet. There was this misconception that, everybody should get the ball to the hole and be making sure they're running it past. And I heard you on a number of podcasts talking about that misconception. I tried to get it into my own game, and I've been really conscious now of not smashing the ball past the hole when I'm like 15 feet and above. And it's incredible actually how by focusing on the pace control and not thinking I have to rush this past, I'm just trying to get it somewhere around the hole, how much impact that's had. So I was really excited to try and get you on here and help Colin and I with our adventures, and then help the folks who are listening as well.
Yeah, every time someone posts, there's a couple different clips. One with Como where I'm talking about trying to get it through basically a 10-inch window from 8 feet. And then anytime someone posts that idea of leaving putts short, it's amazing how misunderstood those ideas are. And people are just like, you can't intentionally leave a putt short. I'm like, you're not intentionally leaving a putt short from 15 feet, but you need to leave some putt short. So you've got to think of everything that we talk about with Decade and proper course management is just you have a shot pattern, whether that's the footprint of the landing shot pattern that you would see on like TrackMan or something for approach shots. But then also you just have a shot pattern that's actually deeper. So if I've got a putt from 20 feet, I'm just trying to hit the same 20-foot putt over and over and over again. I don't care how good or bad you are at putting, your shot pattern is going to be much deeper in speed control than it is wide in directional control. And so let's just say from 15 feet, 20 feet, a tour player is going to have a 5-foot deep shot pattern of speed control. And so if you never leave any short, that means you're going to be hitting putts 5 feet by. The make rate from 5 feet on tours, 75%. So you're going to be three putting from 20 feet fairly often. And the biggest thing that people can't wrap their heads around is this idea of capture size, which is basically how many putts are going to lip out. The harder you hit the putt, the more it has to hit the center-ish of the hole. So if you hit a putt that would have gone 4 feet by, it needs to hit the dead center of the hole, so that way it pops straight up and comes back down. If it's even off center a little bit, it'll catch just a violent lip out. But that you can trace that all the way back to like just hitting a putt 2 feet by, which most people would think that's pretty good speed because I've just got a tap in coming back. While that's true, you've also made the hole 55% smaller because of the speed the outer edges of the balls carrying into the hole, and they're just going to lip out all the time. And so it's just hard for people to wrap their head around this idea that you will make more putts by leaving 25% of your putts from 15 to 20 feet short. And just people can't wrap their head around, but it didn't have a chance. The putt that went 5 feet by didn't have a chance either. And I've been saying this a bunch on podcasts lately. When in my Friday Wolf game, when some guy, I hear him say, "Hey partner, next one's good," I just start walking to the next tee because this one is going to have 6 foot by. Well, at least I got it there. It's like, yeah, you got it there. Great work. I can't commend you more.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like and it must have been about 18 months ago, Scott, I'd heard you talking about that, maybe 2 years actually, and I've switched to left-handed putting, although I'm a right-handed golfer. But I took that on board, and genuinely, in terms of three putts, the amount of three putts that I've had, although I'm not as good at marking that down all the time, you've always got a feel for how often you're three putting. It's incredible how much it's come down. So it's been all thanks to you and listening to those podcasts and hearing your work as well. It's been brilliant.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, that's one thing I try not to be too hard on college players, but a college player relative to a PGA Tour player, they are just absolutely horrific at putting. And it really comes down to those three putt numbers. I mean, again, I kind of try to be offensive to them. I mean, the reason we entered into the Decade app, why we started, you could choose a peer group of PGA Tour stats or college players or scratch handicaps or whatever. The only reason I ever introduced those peer groups was college coaches were asking me to do it because it was so demoralizing to their players to see how bad of putters they were relative to the PGA Tour. And I was like, I mean, can't we work on their mental game if that's the case? But then when more I started looking at the data, I'm like, wow, these guys really are bad. And what it really comes down to is speed control. I mean, what's funny is if you think about anytime anyone has a bad putting round, they go to the putting green and they set up a million different contraptions and they work on their stroke. And it's like, I would guarantee you 90% of bad putting rounds is speed control. And the funniest part about it is if you've got a start line challenge, it's going to take you years to fix that start line because you actually have to manufacture your putting stroke. You have to actually do something mechanical to where you can repeat it over and over and over again. Just by going out and concentrating on speed control when you're practicing, it's pretty shocking how quickly you can improve that. I've got a college player out at my home course who this kid had the 4 tees around the hole at 4 feet. And I just watched him doing this drill for about 30 minutes while I was rolling speed putts all around. And I walked over and I was like, what are we doing here? Just tell me. And he's like, I'm just 3-putting too much. So I'm trying to make more 4-footers. And I'm like, how about just not having the 4-footer in the first place? And he was like, Durr. And so I saw him again 2 weeks later. I was like, I want you to take 90% of your practice time for the next 2 weeks. And I just want you to do speed control. And I saw him another couple weeks later. And he was like, oh my God, it got so much better so fast. It was incredible. And so just, again, focusing on speed control, just from 20 to 40 feet, if you can get deadly from there, I mean, and our 27 handicaps, maybe that number is just from 10 to 30 feet. But if you can get yourself to where you're lagging it up there close every time, you just eliminate so many 3-putts. I forget the numbers. That's one thing that Lou Stagner's better at with me is the amateur data, just because they've got so much through that with Arcos and whatever. But I think the 50-50 make rate on tour is like 8 feet. And I think it's like 4.5 or 5 feet for like a 10 handicap. Again, I'm pulling that number completely out of thin air, but it's a very short putt where they get to 50-50 on. And I just think that's hilarious, honestly.
So just for the noobs out there, like high handicappers like myself, you're talking about speed control. Are you talking about simply hitting putts from different distances and trying to get the weight dead on? Are you aiming to land it right next to the hole? Whether you get it in or not, then you're getting a short putt to actually complete it. Is that what you're talking about?
Pretty much. I mean, so if you go from 20 to 30 feet and you just put like a 2-foot circle somewhere on the greens, just take ball marks and just make like use like 5 of them, make a 2-foot circle. And just go to 20 to 30 feet and just try to lag it into that 2-foot window.
Within 2, yeah.
And,
okay.
And you'll get pretty good at it pretty quick. And again, I'm not as worried about line control. We're talking purely speed on this one. But then what's interesting is once you're comfortable with leaving putts short from 20 feet, you don't have just a 2-foot window to roll it in. You've got a 4 or a 5-foot window to roll it in because we've got 2 feet short to 2 feet long, 2 feet left to 2 feet right. So that 2-foot circle you're practicing actually becomes a 4-foot circle. And then we do the same thing all the way out to, 30 to 40 feet. You're then trying to lag it into effectively a 6-foot circle, which is 3 feet around the hole. And I always hate saying it this way because I still 3-putt more than I should, but it's just not that hard to do. It's not that hard to lag it into a 6-foot circle from 30 feet. But you have to really be focusing on your speed control. And it's funny because obviously Zalatoris is where I got started with him when I helped him win the Texas Amateur and US Junior back in 2014. And obviously he's not the greatest putter that's ever walked the planet. And so using him as my poster boy for putting kind of cracks people up. But I'm like, the one year that I would consider his injury-free year on tour, 2023, he was a dead-on 0 strokes gained putter on the PGA Tour. So he was an average PGA Tour putter, even with that stroke that's obviously not the prettiest. But he's able to accomplish that by having some of the best speed control on tour, because all he does when he practices is basically work on speed control. And that's, you really can see it now on tour, where when you're watching the best players, even on Sunday, the ball is just creeping when it gets to the hole. Like there is no ram in pace anymore for the most part out there. These guys understand. I mean, I've worked with about a third of the PGA Tour in some capacity, whether that was in college or through the Decade app or directly one-on-one. But 100% of people out there on tour know what it is I teach and do. And this is obviously one of the loudest things I trumpet, speed control and putting and shaping the driver one direction. And you see almost universal adherence to that out on the PGA Tour at this point. It's just, and again, like I say, one of the keys is if I have a putt that's breaking a cup, let's say it's 2 cups from 10 feet. If I hit the putt too soft, it starts breaking sooner. If I hit it too hard, it starts breaking later. So even given the identical read and start line, my shot pattern starts to become wider because of speed control. And just the Ping guys did a great study where they had 200 people hit 3,500 putts, a right to lefter and a left to righter and a dead straight one. And this dead straight one shot pattern is pretty tight. And then the 2 that start breaking, you can just see the putts starting to get the shot pattern starting to get wider. And again, on the low side, they're always coming in there short, and on the high side, they're always coming in there long. And it's just wild how straightforward it is. And yet I've got to argue it.
There's something really there's something really heavy in the mindset there as well, isn't it? Like taking the pressure off around hitting the hole and actually just hitting like you say, a 4-foot circle or a 6-foot circle. It just takes some of that pressure off that probably helps you actually relax a bit and get that ball close enough in any case.
Well, I mean, again, I think so. It's kind of similar to Cam Smith. I've got a video of him up on my Instagram page where he's talking about, I'm never trying to make a putt. Like the 3 things I start my seminar off with is stop trying to make putts, stop trying to make birdies, and winning requires luck. And to stop trying to make putts, like people take that too literal too. I'm like, well, obviously I'm not saying how am I ever going to make a putt if I'm not trying to make it. Like, just trust me, you're going to. The hole will accidentally get in the way of a bunch. But like you say, the mindset of just what Cam says basically is once the ball's left my putter, it's out of my control. If you put him on an indoor straight 8-foot putt on AstroTurf, he would never miss it. He would make 1 billion in a row. And yet once you get out on tour, it drops to 50%. That's because of bumps, bounces, break, grain, wind. It's like if you take Steph Curry, I don't know if you guys watch much basketball over there, but if you take Steph Curry shooting threes indoors, that guy makes like 95 out of 100 in practice. It's insane, their make rates in practice. But then you put him in a game, obviously it drops. But if you had him outdoors shooting in a 10-mile-an-hour wind, his make rate would also plummet to, I mean, I'm making up a number here, 50%, because the wind, like it would just be really hard to gauge any sort of gusty wind. It just makes the game harder. And that's what golf is. It's an outdoor sport, unfortunately, played. I find it remarkable we can get greens as smooth as they are, let alone the fact that they're still really imperfect compared to an indoor surface.
Yeah. Should we jump back? So let's give the proper intro here, Scott. You run a system you run a community called Decade, which includes a course management system under the same acronym, isn't it? So the acronym is Distance, Expectation, Correct Target, Analyze, Discipline, and Execute. Can you tell us a little bit about that, sort of the top level of it, for somebody who hasn't come across this at all? What's it designed for, and who's it designed for?
Well, I can tell I got really lucky with the acronym. It's the first word I tried, and it actually worked out perfectly. So people ask me, like, did you ever for fun try a second word? I'm like, no. And they're like, you have no idea how hard making an acronym actually is. But where Decade came from, so Will Zalatoris was a junior golfer at my home course whenever I had Korn Ferry status back in the early 2010s. And so I've known him since he was 9 years old, and we played a lot of golf. He was the little 12-year-old kid, following me around for chipping and putting contest and playing golf and whatever. So the Texas A&M in 2014, when ShotLink data started coming out with strokes gained numbers in 2010, I was a pretty avid poker player, and I used to comment on this online poker forum called 2plus2 in their golf subforum. And I wrote a thread in June of 2010 that was just titled "Is Drive for Show, Putt for Dough Really True?" Because once we had access to these putting make rate numbers, you just realize, oh my God, putting is way harder than I would have ever thought. I mean, again, you just get so mad when you miss an 8-foot putt, and it's like, well, when you're flipping a coin and you guess heads or tails, do you get pissed off when you guess heads and it comes up tails? No, you just guess again. Whereas that's just not what we do in golf. And so where Decade came from was after Will, I caddied for him when he won the Texas A&M in 2014, which, again, he was ranked 3,300 in the world at the time. I understand he's a great player, but he really was not a very good junior. And he sent me a text afterwards. He was like, I'll never be able to repay you. You've given me 25 years of experience in 5 days. And so the thought process was, we're going to take decades off your learning curve. And so what Decade is, like you say, it's a course management system where it's effectively, if you can imagine, if we've got a TrackMan shot pattern, so I know how big your shot pattern is from any given distance, and then via ShotLink originally, I know how many strokes it takes for PGA Tour players to hole from any starting area, off the tee on a par 3, fairway rough, bunkers, trees. Once you combine those two data sets, it's just interesting because, like, Mark Brody, the creator of strokes gained, is a lot smarter than I am, but he was tasked by the PGA Tour to create modern statistics. I, as a player, saw the modern statistics and thought, well, there's something we can do with strategy on this. And so, again, he's, and I hate saying academic because it's always taken so negatively, but he's an academic that was tasked, please do this for us. He did that perfectly. I, as a player, was like, wow, but there's a lot of questions we can start to answer from this. And not that I'm trying to come out and blow up all these old golf cliches like, oh, if the pin's on the left, you need to be up the right side of the fairway to have the right angle in, and, shaping it to all different hole locations and just making the game way more complicated than it needs to be. There's just, it's just a very simple problem to solve at the end of the day. Well, it wasn't, but now it is.
Thanks for listening to Link by Golf. I also co-host a new podcast with Colin Gray called Both Sides of Par. Every episode explores the different sides of the game, from drills and practice habits to course strategy, mindset, equipment, and the realities golfers face at every handicap level. If you enjoy the conversations here, I think you'll really love this one too. Follow Both Sides of Par now on your favourite podcast platform so you don't miss the first episodes. Just search for Both Sides of Par or go to bothpar.com. Now let's get back to the pod.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Scott, I think perhaps the impression might be that Decade is made only for elite players, but I'd love you to talk about how Decade can support any type of player, whether that's a tour player, an elite amateur, somebody like myself off one, or Colin who's playing off a higher handicap. I mean, what kind of strategies in golf do people not really pick up on that they're missing out on?
The best analogy actually that I've come up with, though, just to explain why people, even in that 15 to 20-ish type handicap range, if you're wanting to get better, you're going to need to learn this at some point. And so the best analogy I've come up with is back when I had COVID for the first time in 2020, I was probably like a 36 handicap cardiologist. I didn't know anything about anything. But once I had COVID, my blood pressure started getting really wonky and could just be anything. So I had to do God knows how many EKGs and cardio stress tests and listen to too many Peter Attia podcasts. And so I went from a 36 handicap cardiologist to probably a scratch. Like, if I had your blood work and stuff, I could tell you what meds to take. I could tweak them, but you still wouldn't want me operating on you like a surgeon. That's not me. So the PGA Tour player is the surgeon. I can get you 5 or 6 shots pretty easily just by understanding how to play the game better. And Raymond Floyd, actually, he has a book called The Art of Scoring. And in the jacket, in the inside jacket, it says, even if you and I had the identical physical games, I would still beat you 99 times out of 100 just because I know how to play the game. And the first time I read that, I didn't really understand it, but that is for sure true. I've caddied probably 100 rounds for Zalatoris and Doc Redman on tour, and like a couple of different tour players I've gone out and looped for them, and 100% of the time they've beat their average score. So even I can take a tour player out and have them beat their own scores just by thinking better. And, and to just kind of put a ribbon on that, I worked with Ted Scott for 4 or 5 years when he was with Bubba, right before Scotty hired him. And I called Ted and I was like, dude, this is good, because this kid, he's from Dallas also. I've been around him and known him for a long time. And he was in the top 7 in birdies his first few years on tour, which if you do it 1 year, okay, that might just be an anomaly. But if you do it year after year, that means you're really, really good. That means you can control your golf ball. But then he's also making bogey 15 or 16% of the time, which is not bad. It's still 60th, 70th on the PGA Tour. So it's above, you're better than the average tour player. But if you can control your ball enough to make that many birdies, you should be able to control your ball enough to not make that many bogeys. And I just told Ted, clean this guy up inside 150 yards. And that does not mean get him better with his wedges. That means get him better with his targets. I think you guys are going to do great. And I would not have thought they were going to have 20 wins or 21, whatever he's at right now, which is completely insane. It's not Tiger Woods level, but getting to 20 wins in a few years on tour is, Zalatoris is a really, really good golfer, and he's got 1 win. Scotty has 20 is just insane. But, and I will say it, that's largely just changing the strategy of how he was playing the golf. He didn't magically get better overnight. Obviously he and Ted click well because of their religion and other stuff, but you don't just magically get that much better overnight. And again, he won his first start with him in Phoenix. I'm pretty sure it was. He won his very first start with him and has just never looked back since. And a lot of that comes from just picking better targets. So even at that level, a kid that had won the US Junior and played his way straight on the PGA Tour from the Korn Ferry Tour and had kept his card for a few years, even at that level, he just didn't know how to play the game, because at the end of the day, this is a game. We are trying to post a score. Too many of us, and he's obviously not playing golf swing out there, but too many of us are just out there trying to have the prettiest swing, as opposed to the point of the game is to put a number on the card that is lower than your opponent's.
So is that what the court? So I would love you said you can give me 6 strokes in one sort of set of tips. So that we'll go for that. I'll aim for the 6 strokes here. Is that, so the course management is a big part of that, isn't it? So how does that look at my level? I'm sure Ross will jump in and ask what it looks like at his level, but how does that look at, mid-20s handicap? What does course management look like? You mentioned targets there. Is it really about, I'm not just staring at the flag the whole time? How does that come in when you're mid-20s handicap?
Well, the flag is the biggest distraction in golf. There's just no two ways about it. And this is where it's so hard, because golf is the only sport in the world that's not played on a uniform field of competition. And boy, I said that on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and the soccer nerds jumped in there with, not every pitch is the same. I'm like, really? I thought they were. I had no idea. I understand baseball fields. The gist of a baseball field is the same. I get it. We've got different porches, but the gist is the same. A soccer field, okay, maybe they're different sizes, but the gist is kind of the same.
A whole lot closer, yeah.
whereas a golf course is just anything. So generic advice middle of the green on number 18 at St. Andrews is not very good advice. The green's 52 yards wide and you've probably got about 80 yards to it. Middle of the green on number 10 at Pebble Beach is not very good advice, because it's a really small green and there's an ocean on the right. So it's just a really difficult game to give generic advice. But on average, proper strategies, you should feel really aggressive off the tee, mildly conservative into the greens, and then be really good at lag putting from 20 to 40 feet. And I will admit, it does take maybe a little bit of the excitement out of the game, because you see it for what it is. I personally just like shooting lower scores, so I'm totally fine with it. And it just makes it pretty stress-free. So the 20-ish handicap, the first thing you have to do is know which way the driver's going to curve. But it's the same information all the way up to Ross as a 1, to me as a +3, to the PGA Tour player as a +8 or 9. It's all the same. It's just to what degree. But off the tee, you have to have the ball moving one direction. And if that direction doesn't work on that hole because of trees or some obstacle in the way, then you need to hit a different club to either remove them distance-wise, or shape I'm a big fan of fading driver and drawing a mini driver or 3-wood. So that way you own both shapes off the tee. And then again, where you kind of let off there was firing at the flags. you really do need to get good at not seeing the flag. You do need to, and again, this is where I just hate saying, be aiming more towards the middle of the green, especially as a 27. I'm going to bet your short game's not the solidest. So we want to be getting the ball. But again, this is the same thing with Zalatoris. It's a paradox. Again, I hope Will's not listening to one, but he was such a bad putter, at least in high school, that I actually want him putting as fast as possible. Whereas Will spent his high school career trying to make birdies with his approach shots because he hit the ball just as good then as he does now. I mean, honestly, potentially even better. I mean, he just never missed the center of the club face. He had such control over the golf ball. It was incredible to watch. But by him hitting an extra 2 or 3 greens around because of picking better targets, that's an extra 2 or 3 fewer 8 to 10 foot par putts on average he has. Right there's just a shot and a half or 2 shots for him. I mean, it's just that straightforward. And then just really trusting this idea, like I said, stop trying to make birdies. You have to just understand it's the variance within your shot pattern that you're going to accidentally hit one close. Same thing for you. You're going to have a really big shot pattern, but the more we can get that on the green, and then you've been doing your speed control practicing and putting, you're going to 2-putt a bunch. The shots are just going to fall off like you can't even imagine, but you really just have to understand that the flag is regularly your target. And the last thing I'll say on that is when Will played in the U.S. Open in 2021 or whenever it was, when he finished 6th to Bryson, I think it was 2020 actually, he hit a hole-in-one. And Sean Martin, the PGA Tour staff writer, tweeted, Zalatoris just hit a hole-in-one, and the only thing Fawcett's going to want to talk about is the fact that hole wasn't his target. And I was just like, it wasn't. So I sent Will a text. I was like, what was your target? He said 7 right. So I retweeted Sean with a screenshot of Will's text. I'm like, it wasn't. That's important information. He hit a good shot. I mean, I don't know how long it was, but he was within 7 yards of his target. So it's a good shot. It just happened to have a wreck with the flag. I mean, that's pretty convenient in my opinion.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting, Scott, and Colin and I have been talking about this a lot and talking through like our average scores on holes. I'd been looking back at average scores, and there's one hole at my course, and I made it sound like the toughest hole in the world, albeit it's only 340 from the back tee and 300 from the front. But it was interesting. I found that from the front tee, maybe quite obviously to people, I was under par on average over like 20 rounds. From the back tee, which is only 40 yards back, I was actually half a shot above par. And I was looking at this, I'm like, something's wrong here. And off the front tee, I was taking driver, and off the back tee, I was taking driver. But of course, driver from the back tee with 40 yards lost on the carry is then bringing these bunkers into play. And I'm just getting into trouble with bunkers. I'm in these things all the time, or I'm pulling it left because I'm trying to avoid them. I made a really simple switch. I started hitting 5-wood off the tee, leaving myself 130 yards, and suddenly I'm making pars. Now, I'm not making birdies, but the point is I'm taking out the 6 and the 7 and whatever other number I can manage to get together from that back tee, and I found that really fascinating. Is that something you see for all levels of golfers, but also particularly in lower handicap golfers as well?
Well, literally, the definition of improvement is improving against yourself. So you improved by not, instead of making 4.5 on that hole, by dropping it to 4.1. But still a par, like, because the only reason I bring that up is because you said I'm not making any more birdies. It's like, that's not what drives scores lower. Making fewer bogeys is what drives scores lower. I don't care about birdies at all. Depending on your level, they're going to just show up. I mean, a 79 shooter averages, I think, 1.5 birdies a round. But as that player improves through the 70s, 70 to 80% of their improvement is from bogey and higher avoidance. So the strategy that you figured out on that hole was obviously absolutely correct. And the decade driving decision tree would probably give you the same thing. If the fairway pinches to less than 40 yards between a bunker and trees or bunkers or whatever, you should be either carrying that if you can or laying back short of that, assuming that removes the trouble. The challenge, the real key off the tee shot strategy is, and if you're going to consider not hitting driver, the question to ask is, what's the alternative and what does it accomplish? And so if dropping back to 3 would just brought a different set of bunkers into play, it's like, well, I may as well send driver and have less in. It's just this is by definition a hard hole. So we understand that. So like I say, if you just doing better against yourself is improvement, it's that whole 1% better everyday idea. But if the scoring average, but also if the scoring average on the hole for the field is 4.1 or 2, and you make a 4, you have picked up shots against the field, even if the winning score. This is, again, I know I take questions off into God knows what directions and how, but the main thing that you have to understand is this idea of fractional bogeys. If the scoring average on it, we have these binary: a birdie gains you 1, a bogey loses you 1, a double bogey loses you 2. So a double bogey's twice as bad as a bogey. That's rarely the case. Typically, holes par 4 is just making up a number. Again, have a 4.3 scoring average. If you make a bogey on it, you've only lost 0.7 shots against the average. If you can make 2 pars on the same hole, you're back to average. If you make a bogey, you've lost 0.7. If you make a double, you've lost 1.7 shots. You have to play that hole 5 or 6 times now instead of twice. So a bogey is 1.7 shots bad versus, a double's 1.7 versus a bogey's 0.7. A double bogey's 2.5 times as bad as a bogey, not just twice. And that's a really hard thing for people to wrap their heads around. Again, especially in amateur golf, even par 5s rarely play under par. D1 men's college golf, the average par 5 score is 4.83. Par is just not a bad score on any hole ever. Circling back to what I was saying about Scotty earlier, he was 7th in birdies those first couple of years. And then he went from 15, 16% in bogey rate down to 10 or 11% in bogey rate. He gained almost 0.8 shots against himself by making fewer bogeys. Yeah, he made a quarter of a birdie more per round in this great run. But literally 3 times his improvement was from bogey and higher avoidance versus more birdies, which just falls right in with those numbers I just told you, that as you improve through the 70s, 70 to 80% of your improvement is from bogey and higher avoidance. That goes all the way to number 1 in the world. I mean, it's just, again, this is what's funny, that I have to come on podcast and argue this point across where it's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. The guy just got 3/4 of a shot better with fewer bogeys and 1/4 of a shot better with more birdies. And that's what I told you before he did it, he was going to do. Like, I'm not guessing. This is how it's going to work. And it just sucks because I don't want you to go out on the course and feel timid and scared and like you're just tiptoeing around trying to avoid bogeys. But at the end of the day, I want you just tiptoeing around trying to avoid bogeys. And then you'll just trust the rest will be there. I'll say one last thing on that too, because I don't have a clue if I answered your question or not, but I also like this one. I've got a college coach that he told me last year, he's like, I started running qualifying where I don't even count birdies and better. And I was like, really? And all of a sudden I started thinking, I was like, that's actually brilliant. Your better player is going to be the one that can intentionally avoid bogey, but it's a really great learning lesson for them because you still have to finish the hole. So even when you hit it to 20 feet, your only goal, if birdie and better doesn't count, is just to lag it close. And if you actually get the information, wow, I did still make a few. And my scoring average did drop. Hey, oh my God, I went out today and I didn't try to make a single birdie and I made 6. I mean, you're still going to have to play the game correctly. Just because you have a sand wedge and the pin is 4 yards from the left, that doesn't mean you aim at the dead center of the green and leave yourself a 40-footer. It means you're aiming a little bit away from the flag, and you're still going to get birdie looks. And it's just, I mean, again, it's just so straightforward. It's ridiculous that the game's about bogey avoidance.
Yeah, that's good.
And one of the things that is interesting, we'll get some questions here as well, is you just talked about pin positions. Should 2 golfers with different handicaps be approaching the same pin position with a different strategy if it's if it's a tight pin? So I'm playing off 1, Colin's off 27, and we've got a tight pin in front of us. We're both at 100 yards. Is there a difference between us? Should we be thinking in a different way?
No doubt. It's probably about 4 or 5 yards difference. So let's pretend you're a 1 handicap and a pin is 4 yards from the left edge of the green, and there's not, there's not water left or a crazy bunker. There's just kind of some rough and stuff. Your target, Ross, should be about probably 2 yards right of that flag, whereas Colin should probably be close to 6 or 7 yards right of that flag. But now the average green width in the States, at least, is about 23 yards wide. If it's much less than 17, it's a pretty small green. Again, I'm talking in width, not depth. And anything bigger than 25 is a pretty big green. I mean, again, I do believe, and maybe I've just got St. Andrews stuck in my head over here, but y'all's greens do seem to run a little bit larger on average. But if we've got a 23-yard wide green and the pin is 4 yards from the left edge, and I'm telling Colin to aim 6 yards right of it, yeah, I'm basically telling him to aim at the middle of the green. But again, if we were on number 18 at St. Andrews, where it's 52 yards wide and the pin's 4 from the left, I wouldn't tell him to aim 22 yards right of that flag. So it's kind of this according, but you again would probably be taking relatively dead aim because there's nothing left on 18, just fairway over there, 1T, depending on how far you pull it. So yes, there are different targets. And again, this is what people, when, I obviously have plenty of haters online, probably well-deserved, but what they don't understand is like Decade, it does adjust for that. It accounts for that. I mean, and I'll say like running the full actual strategy is a 27. You don't need to do that. You need to understand the ideas, the principles. I'm actually working on an app right now called Decade Breaking 90, because I didn't realize how many people are in that 15 to 25 handicap that do buy Decade. And I'm like, you're probably not quite ready for the full deal. Again, you'll get in there and you'll learn how the art of scoring, if you will, and you'll learn different practice drills, but the actual strategy concepts are probably not too advanced. They're pretty simple, but you're just not quite ready for that part of the game. And so trying to really take a guy with a 27 handicap and teach them, these are the things you need to learn to get to that next level. And then you graduate into the full Decade app. Yes. I mean, a 27, I wouldn't even say like, we need to be choosing these targets this way. You need to be a little bit more broad stroked of kind of towards the middle of the green, depending on how big the green is.
Yeah. It sounds like you're bringing forward that kind of putting aspect rather than aiming for the hole. You're aiming for a 4-foot circle. When I'm aiming at the green from 100, yards away, I'm aiming for maybe a 10-foot, 20-foot circle, perhaps. That's is that too much?
How about a 20-yard circle? I mean,
20-yard circle, yeah.
But this is what's crazy but that's, people don't realize how big shot patterns are. This is since we just had the Masters, not only directionally, but in depth. People always want to say, I don't know why on number 3 at Augusta, they don't just lay up to 100 yards. I had Aaron Wise hit 20 sand wedges trying to hit it 100 yards, and his shot pattern was 14 yards deep, trying to hit the exact same shot on a driving range over and over and over again, normalized to no wind. The left part of number 3 is only 11 yards deep. And if it's playing soft, you need to land it towards the back 5 yards. And if it's playing firm, you need to land it towards the front 5 yards. So here, this guy has a 14-yard deep shot pattern in practice, and he's got about a 5 or a 6 yard wide zone to actually land it in. And so it's really this idea, kind of what you're alluding there to, is understanding shot patterns. But I got really lucky that the first E of Decade is expectation, like you said earlier, because the whole game is about expectation management. The entire game is about expectation management and just understanding. It's hard. I mean, I try not to leave people too kicked in the face when they leave a podcast or whatever listening to me, but like, it's a really hard game, man. And the best players in the world still hit really, really bad golf shots. And again, proper strategy kind of accounts for all of that because your shot pattern is so big.
Yeah, it's good to get a reminder of that sometimes. It helps the mindset a little bit. But no, that's cool. Yeah, I like that idea. So it's like looking at the obstacles, looking at the hazards, all of that, and making sure your, let's say, 20-yard circle then is avoiding all of those, if at all possible.
But it's not avoiding all of them. It's avoiding the proper amount. If you're never hit, like off the tee, if you're never hitting it into the water ever, you're probably playing too conservatively. On the PGA Tour, if there's water in play, they should probably be hitting it at about 5% of the time. More than that, unless the hole's really hard or really crazy for some other reason, if it's more than that, it's pretty hard to offset that penalty rate. But if it's any less than that, you're playing too conservatively. I mean, and it's funny because I've said this for a while, like if you're hitting 100% of your fairways, you're not swinging the driver hard enough. And it's funny because I have fallen into this trap actually where for the last 3 years, I've just driven it so good. It's honestly insane. And it finally dawned on me recently. I'm like, I guess I'm probably not swinging hard enough. I need to hit it harder to hit it less straight, as wild as that sounds. I can give up a fairway around to hit it 15 or 20 yards further. That's just a good mathematical trade-off.
You mentioned earlier on, Scott, around the thinking off the tee and always having a set shape. I didn't quite understand that. Can you tell me a bit more about that? What are you thinking there in terms of how you hit it off the tee? What's that shape?
Well, and you can see this on the PGA Tour now. Most guys hit the exact same shot off the tee every single time. It's funny because, Rory McIlroy is a unicorn. He does try to work the ball both ways, and he's really, really good at it. That doesn't mean I get to. I mean, I'm a +3 and I suck at it. And the biggest problem is, like he did on number 18, the 72nd hole at the Masters, he double crossed that thing and got pretty lucky. I would like to ask him sometime, why didn't you just hit 3-wood? And I bet it's because his miss with the 3-wood, those trees, you just can't believe how narrow that shoot is at Augusta on 18 until you've seen it. And so if you're going to play a draw, like you've got to be on the far left-hand side of the tee box, and you're going to come pretty close to that tree. I mean, it's a better trees to get through with a fade. And so if the miss with 3-wood for him especially is probably going to be left, and you'll see guys over there in those left trees take unplayables and all kinds of stuff happen. There's nothing right. I mean, there's a bunch of trees, but they're relatively sparse, and then it gets over to number 10. You're probably going to be able to get it back out and in play in salvage 5, whereas left definitely brings 6 into play. So I think that's probably was his idea of trying to hit driver instead of 3-wood. But because even though he's a unicorn, he's not as good at fading driver as he is drawing driver. He's just not. And that's where that shot, kind of a stuck flare, that shot came from the fact that his driver is fit for a draw. And so he's got to try extra hard to get it to fade. And that's what I guarantee you in his head was, make sure this thing fades. As opposed to if the driver was just fit. And again, I do believe that Rory should get a driver fit for a fade that comes out at Jeff Smith, and TaylorMade posted something yesterday with him just hitting every shot off the tee during his practice round at Quail Hollow. And Jeff Smith, who's a buddy, I don't think people realize he's just harassing me. He's not actually being mean. He's like, somewhere in Texas, Scott Fawcett is losing his mind right now watching Rory work it both ways off the tee. And I'm like, no, he's really good at it. But look at his numbers, though, because the fades were 26 and 2700 RPM spin. The draws were 21 and 2200 RPM spin. I do believe that if he fit a driver to where his fade was 2100, it would just be this flat hammered cut. And then his 3-wood, or preferably, in my opinion, mini driver, if he had that thing fit for a draw, he would own both shapes off the tee without having to change his swing. And the reason that changing your swing with driver is so hard is because you can't really move ball position because of lack of loft. I can fade and draw a 7-iron just by moving the ball forward and back in my stance. That's a way you shift path. So if I play a fade, if I just move the ball a few inches back in my stance, that's going to artificially move my path a couple of degrees to the right. If you think of a hula hoop, I'm catching it sooner in the hula hoop's downward angle of attack. My path is going to, again, be artificially shifted to the right. But with driver, you just can't do that. Whereas a mini driver or 3-wood, you can play maybe where you would play a 7-iron in your stance. And that alone is going to take 3 or 4 degrees off of your path, off of your left path. So again, that's where I do believe that historically draws went further than fades just because they had less spin. It wasn't like a draw just goes further. I mean, again, it's funny how, and I've heard announcers, it's been a while, but I've heard announcers be like, oh, it's coming out with topspin. Like, no, it's not. It's coming off with backspin. I mean, it's just not coming off a topspin. I can assure you that. But that's what we thought. And we didn't hopefully think that, but it just had less spin. And so before driver and ball fittings, they went further because they were closer to optimal because the ball was so spinny. Now that we can get a faded driver to launch at 13 degrees and 185 ball speed and 21 rubber spin, that's going to go just as far. It's the exact same thing as a draw. We've just tilted the spin axis one way versus the other. And so I do personally prefer a fade with the driver. But if you draw the driver well, I wouldn't tell you to change that. I mean, like Zalatoris drew driver when he was in high school because he was 6'2" and 145 and wasn't strong enough. I mean, you got to have some strength to get the club out in the right position to hit a fade correctly, as opposed to just like hanging on. And so he played this kind of stuck, slingy draw through high school. And then as he got stronger, he came out of college 30 pounds of muscle stronger. And then he could start hitting a fade the proper way, which is now what he does with driver. I mean, you're never going to see that guy. And again, I would say 90% of the tour hits the same shape with the driver 90% of the time. I mean, they just have really accepted this reality. And straight's not a shape. There's not many guys on tour who actually try to hit the driver straight.
Yeah, and actually, just on that as well, Scott, and you touched on there, Rory being in trouble. So if we're in trouble, we're in trees. Does our strategy change between our handicaps or maybe the score we're on at the time? How should we be approaching getting back out into a better position? What should be in our minds, and what kind of questions should we ask ourselves when we're in trouble?
You said from the trees, correct?
Yeah, from the trees, or just any other type of issue that can face you.
My first Scottish accent clarification.
We've done well.
I've been doing pretty good here, 30 minutes in, but the strategy doesn't change. Your abilities change. So no matter who you are, you need to get the ball out of the trees. The shot that you're going to try to pull off, you need to be able to pull it off about 90% of the time for it to be the correct play. And if you can't do that, you need to keep on finding an easier and easier shot, because if there is one old golf cliche that's strategy related that's correct, it's you have to get out of the trees in one shot. And if that means just chipping it out sideways. So 100 yards on the PGA Tour, if they're in the trees, they average 3.8 shots to hole out. So if it's a par 5, a par 4, they average 4.8. So once you're in the trees, you're making bogey 80% of the time on tour. Think back to that fractional bogey thing I was talking about earlier. If I'm in the trees on tour 100 yards and I make bogey, I only lost 0.2 shots against what my expected score was in the first place. If I make double, I've lost 1.2 shots. This is where this idea gets totally blown up in your face. Making a double from the trees isn't twice as bad as bogey. It's 6 times as bad, because not only can you only lose shots fractionally, you can only gain them back fractionally also. I get it that when we make a birdie, I gained a full shot, but you break that down into its shot values. You probably gained a little bit on the tee shot. You probably gained a little bit on the approach shot, and you probably gained a decent amount with the putt when you make a birdie. But you're making these little gains on each shot because you could gain a little bit on the drive, gain a little bit on the approach shot, miss the 20-footer, and still I gained 0.3 shots because the scoring average on the hole was 4.3, obviously making up numbers here, but I still gained overall. I just didn't gain 1.3 because I happened to make the putt, or I happened to really stuff the approach shot or whatever. So it really does just come back to, from the trees, just realizing I'm dead here. If you're hitting it in the trees 14 times around, you need to work on your driver. If you're hitting it in the trees the appropriate amount of times, it really is an opportunity. And again, I've got a slide in the video in the Decade app that's just titled, it's a picture from the trees, and it just says, is this adversity or opportunity? Because if we are hitting it in the trees the same amount of times over the course of a round or tournament, and I do better, smarter things from there, it's opportunity. Again, if I'm doing it 14 times around, it's not an opportunity. I need to really work on my driver. But if I'm doing it the appropriate amount, and a concrete example of that is when Will won the Texas Am, it was on a pretty tight tree line golf course, Brook Hollow here in Dallas. And our opponent in the third round hit it in the trees on number 10, which was a par 5 right. And Will was out in the middle of the fairway with a 7-iron in. And this guy just got lucky to make a 6. He just butchered this thing straight up the right side of the fairway and wound up making like a 20-footer for bogey. And I asked him, he's actually the Oklahoma State assistant coach now, shout out Stratton Nolan. I asked him when I did a seminar at Oklahoma State, I said, do you remember that shot? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, did the fact that Will was in the fairway with a 7-iron in his hands impact your decision? He's like, absolutely. I mean, I knew he's making birdie and I didn't want to lose 2 shots. And I'm like, well, you're lucky you didn't lose 3, because what he didn't realize is 3 holes later, when Will was in the trees and he was in the fairway, Will pitched it out down the fairway, had a nice little 40-yard shot. Yeah, he made bogey also, but he did not bring double into play. And that's really, so the key is Colin is going to have to take a far more conservative route than you are, just because of ball control. But the number is still the same. You need to be able to pull the shot off. And again, this is where it's a subjective, effectively you need to be able to pull the shot off 100% of the time that you catch it solid. Because let's say that you're trying to keep it under a tree and you hit a little bit heavy, ball jumps up on you. You still had the right strategy. You just mishit the shot. But so the shot you're envisioning, if you ever hit it solid and it hits the tree, it was not the right shot.
Yes.
That's a good point.
The wild thing, I mean, again, but the wild thing about it is, so amateurs, if tour players make bogey 80% of the time from trees, even a scratch, I guarantee you, is they average bogey from the trees. And the funniest part about it is, and look at yourself the next time that you're out in the trees and you get down in there and you're 150 and you've got like this perfect hallway to the pin, and it is the shot you should be taking. Like I'm agreeing it's the shot you should be taking. But we get in there and the first thought you will have is like, oh, wow, I can still get a look at birdie. It's like, dude, how about, oh, wow, par's got a much better chance here than bogey. I mean, but you have this little initial twinge of like, oh, I can hit this little low cut 4-iron up there and still get a 15-footer. It's like, I could put you in the fairway here and a 15-footer would be a hell of a result, let alone the fact you're trying to hit a punch cut 4-iron from the rough under a tree. It's just wild how just dumb we are as golfers.
And it's funny,
go on,
Colin.
Go on, Ross.
I was going to say, you get into the mental side of course management there, Scott. So for both of us, I mean, how much do you see emotion getting in the place of people making good decisions? And that's going to be true for anyone, right? That's true for me. It's true for Colin. True for anybody that plays golf. What coping strategies would you recommend for people? Is there ways you can help with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, the whole game, it is the mental side that it helps more than anything. I mean, to put a ribbon on the Zalatoris thing, the only reason I caddied for him that year in 2014 at the Texas Am is I had been doing this work for nearly 9 months, and I got a cortisone shot in my right elbow, which I've had surgery on and fixed since then, but the doctor paralyzed my arm for a couple days. He got this cortisone shot too close to the nerve, so he told me, he's like, you really don't need to play golf for a few months. That's the whole reason I caddied for Will. I was not trying to create Decade. I was not trying to create some product. But after he won there in the U.S. Junior and then at the USM, the SMU coach told me, he's like, you've got something here. I bought the domains beyourowncaddie.com because my thought process originally was, man, the stuff I'm saying to Will, I would never say to myself. When he hit it in the trees, I'd be like, dude, totally fine. We're going to get down there. Maybe we've got a shot. Maybe we don't. If not, we're going to put it out in the fairway. We're going to get it on, make bogey. And it's okay. The thing is, I really actually meant it. Like, dude, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Whereas if I had hit the ball in the trees, I'd be like, gosh, dang it, I'm going to make bogey. I'm going to drop one back. Like, it would be a total catastrophe. And so the understanding of the expectations is, to me, the real key. And that's, again, what I really focus on in the tutorial content in the Decade app, is how to use all of these numbers to soothe yourself mentally. I was the biggest hothead in professional golf when I was playing professionally in my 20s. Like, I was a total lunatic. Imagine whoever the worst person you've played golf is. I was him times 10. I mean, like, it was insane looking back at it. But now, through a combination of meditation and, just being a 52-year-old with far more life experiences, I just don't, for the most part, get mad on the course anymore, because I just understand this is the way the game works. And if I just stick to making clean, emotionless decisions, I'm not saying I'm going to play well, but I'm not going to turn what should have been, if my scoring average is 72 and I'm about to shoot a 74 or 5, I'm not going to turn it into a 78 or 9. I mean, it's really funny. If you go look at my handicap revision scores over the last 3 months, I haven't been hitting my irons very well. I just shoot like 73 or 4 every single day. I drive it well enough that I don't get in trouble. My irons aren't good enough to make many birdies, and my lag putting from 20 to 40 feet's pretty good. So I just like par everything. Luckily, my irons have turned around, so I've shot a few pretty solid rounds in the last 6 weeks that I've played. But it really, those 73s into 77s just don't exist for me anymore. I might still shoot 77, but that was because I just played bad. It's not because I gave up and started trying to force things. I mean, what's funny is we again, if your scoring average is 72, so 36, if you turn at 39, your scoring average isn't 72 anymore. It's 75. This isn't, we just automatically revert to the mean in golf. We do over a large enough sample, but over 9 holes, no, dude, your scoring average is. There was a great Facebook post a number of years ago where a college coach said that a player of his was making the turn. He's like, don't worry, coach, I'm about to get a few back. And he said that he yelled over to him, just stop giving them away. And it's like, yes, don't try to force them to come back. And that's why the best college teams are the best ones coached up on these ideas. Because if you've got 5 guys counting 4 in a 3 or 4 round event, someone's playing bad every single day. And odds are a round or two people are going to play bad. And if both those guys try to force it to get it back and it doesn't work out, you've just shot yourself out of the tournament. I mean, that's all there is to it. And so you can take that down to an individual basis also. And, people are like, well, what if I've got a birdie the last 2 holes to win? I'm like, you're probably not going to win.
Yes.
I don't know what to tell you. The better route for you to do this is you make a birdie, hopefully, and you cross your fingers your opponent makes a bogey, because you're probably going to need some help. You should have played the first 70 holes better. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That's why winning is so difficult, and not only on the PGA Tour, but just in general. Like, it's just hard to win golf tournaments. Even the best players in the world, a 2% win rate on the PGA Tour, they play about 20 or 25 events a year. So a 2% win rate is winning basically once every other year. Like, that's a phenomenal career. It is an absolutely phenomenal career. And that's basically the equivalent of picking the ace of spades out of a deck of cards. I mean, like, good luck. You just, all you can do is set yourself up for the best odds of that happening, and then just roll the dice over and over again. I mean, that's where, like, guys like Colin Morikawa and Jordan Spieth came out with these ridiculous win rates to start their careers. And again, I was just like, they're not going to sustain this. They don't hit the ball far enough. That is an unsustainable win rate for those 2 players. You can't chip and putt your face off every day of the week. It's just not the way it works. The key to those guys is when they do revert to the mean over a 2 or 3 year winless period, is not to freak out and rebuild everything. It's to just keep doing what you were doing and just trust, man, I just, in poker terminology, I just ran hot for 2 years. I mean, that's all there is to it. You just ran hot, and that's going to happen. This is where Scotty right now with what he's doing. I'm like, I think he's running hot, but also the guy just is there every single week. I don't understand it because I don't understand how I don't understand how he hits the middle of the club face with that footwork, but
we're just about up on the hour here, Scott. We really appreciate the time you've given us here. Got one little question here just to tie up. If you were caddying for me then, 25 handicap this weekend, anyone else like me as well, like 15 maybe plus or 20 plus, like what's the kind of one core thing ties up what we've talked about today that you tell them to do differently?
We would have a very clear intention on every shot. Mm-hmm. The human body is amazing at doing what you tell it to do, as long as you tell it what to do. And I'm not even talking you as a 27, me as a +3. It's really strange to me how when you put me in kind of a recovery type shot where I really get in there and I really visualize it and I really feel it, I'm like, this is exact how well I do. And then you put me with a pitching wedge at 125 in the middle of the fairway and I just hit it that way. I mean, I do believe that just really understanding exactly what we're trying to do with the shot, really visualizing it. The challenge is you're not going to pull it off very often. And so sticking with that is really difficult to do. But really just having to express your intention out loud to somebody else would clean up so much stuff. It's incredible. I mean, I played in the US Open in 1999 and I hated playing with caddies. The very few Corn Ferry events I played in back in the day or the US Open, I hated playing with a caddy. And I thought it was because I was like this antisocial kind of hothead. Looking back at it, it was a total imposter syndrome thing. I didn't want to have to tell this guy who normally caddies on the PGA Tour for whoever, this is what I'm going to try to do with this shot, because I knew odds are I'm not going to do it. And well, you know, it's just a really difficult thing to just get that granular and specific with your intention on every single shot. And so that's, again, to when I caddied those 100 rounds for Zalatoris. He didn't hit a single shot. Eventually he did, but the first 2 or 3 tournaments, so the Texas Am and US Junior that he won, and then the US Amateur that he almost won in 2014, people don't realize that also. He didn't hit a single shot that I didn't tell him, this is exactly what I visualized it for him. This is exactly what I want you to do with it. And oh, by the way, the average score on the PGA Tour from here is 2.9. And he'd just be like, 2.9? We're 145. I mean, it's roughly what it would be, 150. And it's just like, that's just not that hard to do as long as we don't make too many bogeys. I'm going to accidentally make some birdies. And it really is just that idea of just knowing exactly what you're trying to do on every single shot, being present for the 10 seconds, 20 seconds it takes to commit and get in there and hit the shot, and then go back to doing whichever you want to do. I mean, I used to think this all the time. I've had a number of tour players say the same thing too. But like, what should I be thinking about as I'm walking down the 72nd fairway with a 1-shot lead? Nothing. There's nothing to think about until you get to your ball, and then you analyze the constraints of the shot. How long is it? What's the surrounding hazard? What's my lie like? What's the wind? How firm are the greens? And then hit the shot, and then don't think about anything else. There's nothing to think about. When you start trying to think, what should I be thinking about? You start making your thought process pick up pace and start going faster and faster. And then you're going to start making emotion-based decisions. And that's a bad idea. So I know that's a long-winded way of getting around to just really visualizing what you're trying to do on every single shot.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. Ross, did you have anything to tie it with?
No, that was great. Scott, a real privilege to have you on the show. Really appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for sharing. And Colin and I have got some great things to take away, and I'm sure the listeners have as well. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah. And if anyone out there's listening, you want to check out what Scott does, go over to decade.golf is the main site for you, isn't it, Scott? And I think you're pretty active on Instagram by the looks of it, decade_golf as well. So loads of good tutorial videos on there. Is there anywhere else you would send them, Scott?
Those two places. Unfortunately, my name is quite Googleable at this point.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks again, Scott. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode from Both Sides of Par featuring Scott Fawcett. I'm Ross McGuire. Thanks for listening.
Lomond Golf Tours have helped thousands of guests build bespoke golf trips to create a magical experience. Travel in style with our executive chauffeur travel, whether it's golf on a major championship venue or one of our hidden gems, 5-star accommodation or a boutique bed and breakfast, or is it whiskey tasting on a private boat? Lomond Golf Tours are here to help build the tour of a lifetime. Whether you're celebrating a special occasion or ticking it off your bucket list, embark on a trip that you'll remember forever. Visit www.lomondgolftours.com.